From Creamer Media in Johannesburg, this is the Real Economy Report, our top stories this week. We speak to the World Trade Organization Director General Pascal Lamy on trade and climate change. We see record earnings for Africa's top gold producer, and we witness the unveiling of Johannesburg's tallest statue. The World Trade Organization has released a research report on the relationship between trade and climate change. Director General of the WTO, Pascal Lamy, spoke to Christy van der Merwe about this relationship.
The economics of climate change are proving a sticking point in international negotiations, and potential impacts on world trade, both economic and legal, could be affected by decisions made at these global negotiations.
The economic part of that is researching whether more international trade is environmentally friendly or not. Some will say, well, if you have more international trade, you have more transport. Transport is carbon emitting. Others would say, yes, but 90% of world trade is transported by sea, which is a very low carbon emission mode of transport as compared to air transport or lorry transport. Some will say international trade, because it creates efficiencies, creates a better use of resources, whether it's labor, whether it's capital, or whether it's natural resources. And then you've got the legal side, which is whether things like border tax adjustments or free allocation of emitting permits, how do they translate into WTO standards? And our basic stance on this is that let's give a priority to the environmental negotiation. Let's make sure that there is a common objective for reducing carbon emissions. Let's make sure that the burden sharing is all right, and this has to do with outside WTO. This is negotiated within another bit of the international system. Once this is done, if there are trade adjustments, then we will look at that, as happened with CFCs, for instance. There was an agreement on CFCs reductions. This translated in some cases in national tax systems, which then translated into border adjustments. We never had any problem in WTO. The environmental negotiation has to come first, preferably in a multilateral way, and then we will adjust the WTO system. But again, this is a downstream issue as compared to the big challenge, which is how can an international agreement on carbon emissions reductions take place in a fair way with this principle of common but differentiated responsibility, which of course necessitates an agreement between big industrialized countries emitters and potentially big emerging countries emitters. The right sequence is a multilateral environmental agreement, and then, if necessary, we will bring this into the universe of trade rule, which, by the way, have been built with the notion that trade has to contribute to sustainable development.
AngloGold Ashanti has reported record earnings for its second quarter, even amidst a chilly economic climate. After the break, Lony Prinsloo asks CEO Mark Kutafani how this was achieved and what shareholders should expect come next quarter.
Well, we've done better quarter on quarter. Our production is up 2% and our realised gold price is up 5% as we've reduced the hedge book. So we're doing better from a production and realised price perspective. Costs are a little bit higher, but with the higher prices we've been able to overweight that and we've posted a record quarter. So it's been a good result. In terms of the next quarter, the challenge will be in particular costs. In South Africa we have the winter power tariffs. and we'll bring to account the recent wage negotiations. So that will knock us back a little bit, but all in all we'll see better production, and I think we'll do pretty well in the quarter. I will say though that the third quarter results will look a little bit confusing because we'll have all those hedge book movements, but on fundamental performance we'll do pretty well. I think the most important thing is that we fully participate, or 95% participate in an improving gold price. If you look at gold price, even 2 years ago was $300 below where it is today. So we're now at close to $930 an ounce. So our shareholders, instead of taking a 20% discount, and we've now reduced that to about 6%. So on a dollar per ounce basis, we're seeing about $120 to $130 an ounce more price, or a price increase relative to where we would have been, and that's been substantial, and it's underpinned record earnings performance.
Public art is an important part of Johannesburg's inner city regeneration. Christy van der Merwe was there for the unveiling of the latest and tallest artwork.
Johannesburg Inner City is now the proud exhibitor of an 11-meter-high steel sculpture by prolific Johannesburg-born artists William Kentridge and Gerard Marx. Known as the Firewalker, it evokes bits of torn paper, primarily chaotic, but when viewed at a certain angle, reveals coherence. The silhouette of a woman carrying a fire brazier on her head.
It's both a real image but a surprising one. One doesn't usually associate fire as something that you carry on your head. A bucket or a drum, which they're used in, is usually used for carrying water. So it's rather than carrying fire. So that's another inversion.
I think the sculpture carries in it the kind of logic, which is this image of the woman carrying the fire. But that image is really only a kind of key to the image. It's a moment of coherence. But 90% of the views around it are of different views of collapse and explosion. Once you find a moment of intimacy with that thing that you're looking at, there is a moment of coherence. Things do make sense. But for the rest of it, once you're outside of that moment of intimacy, it's chaotic. I think that's a very apt metaphor for the city of Joburg and for being inside of a city in general. We originally built a series of maquettes and had a number of meetings with engineers around those maquettes and how to actualize it. The complication was that the piece is really meant to kind of act as an explosion. So it was really about trying to create a structure that had very little sense of gravity to it. And of course, what an engineer brings to a structure is a sense of gravity. So it was always a kind of counterintuitive project working with the engineer.
The major challenge in a project like this is the wind loading, because you've got a very slender thing made of plates, and the idea under normal circumstances where it's a big sign, there's no constraints of the structure. We all see the huge columns, but in a thing like this, the idea is to hide the structure within the sculpture. Well, there's a few tons of steel hidden in there. We had a maquette, a model of this thing, which was about 1 meter high, and that was it. And from that, we had to try and get our structure in there. And in fact, it was so complicated that we decided, in fact, not to do drawings, but to do a basic analysis, give the fabricator some guidelines, and as it went up, almost on an ad hoc basis, say we need another strut here, we need a thing. The only things that we did with full-blown drawings were the foundations and the guts of the thing holding it down into the ground. But that's and it's mostly in there is big chunks of structural steel H-beams and I-beams, but hopefully most of them are hidden in amongst the artist's vision.
We were very lucky with working with a particular team of steel constructors and the engineers that worked on it. It was just phenomenal. I think everyone understood that if that image did not make sense, then this is just a heap of steel.
And now for a sneak preview of this week's Engineering News magazine. Read how the Dinner Lady Schools initiative aims to boost maths and science pass rates. Engineering News interviews the World Trade Organization Director General Pascal Lamy, who reiterates that the WTO does not need any structural reform. And we report that South Africa's Public Enterprises Minister remains committed to nuclear projects. And in Mining Weekly this week, read our cover story in which Xstrata CFO Trevor Reed argues that a combined Xstrata and Anglo-American has the potential to be a new diversified mining powerhouse. We report that Zimbabwe is heading for 1 million ounces of platinum a year, and read about a project in the UK that aims to combine the underground gasification of coal with fuel cell technology to produce extremely low carbon emission electricity from coal. That's Creamer Media's Real Economy Report. Join us again next week for more news and insight into South Africa's real economy.
Creamer Media's engineering news has delivered unmatched insight into the real economy. For breaking news, visit engineeringnews.co.za. The engineering news, not just for engineers.